areas, one which would relate to the beauty of life, and that would be concentrating on lessons from nature. Okay, and so biomimetics, and I can speak very broadly on the subject. I can focus somewhat on the creative processes that led me to the research that I've done over the years, and underlying it all is some theme of respect for nature, and we need more of that, I think, on the world now. So yes, and the examples can be taken from the animal world, from the plant world, and with an indication about how those lessons are being applied to practical benefit of humanity, I think. So something on that area. The second area, which would be largely then on the topic of the miracle of thinking. I'm just leaning to try and read my own handwriting. so the miracle of thinking, which is where we celebrate and investigate the ability of the human mind to travel to distances and times that are sometimes before they become accessible to human instrumentation. So we develop equipment for studying the theories, but if you think about how astronomy developed and our view of the cosmos developed and our view of the microscopic world, our ingenuity and the power of our thinking, we're developing devices that can probe and take pictures and measure, but we're also developing mathematics, and just purely by thinking we can derive some quite remarkable information. So, how did the ancient Greeks measure the distance to the moon or to the sun, or realize that the world was round? I can sit here and take some observations here that allows me to actually calculate the mass of Pluto. Which we don't even believe it's a planet anymore, but some people don't. But how can I sit here and how can I tell how far away it is, and how quickly it is orbiting, and what the mass is? And then we might also ask, well, why does it matter that we can do things like that? Okay, is it important that we can do things like that? And what is the... And there are many benefits, of course. There are also many dangers, because we cannot just use imagination without having some sort of ethical lens for which to look at the same time. And so they go hand in hand. And so I can talk about metaphor and how the power of using diagrams and mathematics and abstraction, how it can actually lead us to an understanding of the universe. Okay, so that's the second area. And then something that maybe crosses between the two is the interplay between particularly materials, in the sense of materials science and engineering, innovation, and history and the arts, and how those are kind of tied together. So I can see that's got a little bit of both of the topics that you're interested in. It's got a little bit about the miracle of thinking. It's also got something about the beauty of life as well, because the inspiration that drove the arts, the beauty of life, cannot be ignored in that. And living beings have created some very beautiful things in the arts. And I don't just mean painting, but particularly the materials aspect. It's not just visual art, but very much in architecture as well. I would focus primarily on Western art and construction, only because it's what I know the most about. Though there are some rather interesting bridges. Actually, people have been building literal bridges around, in different parts of the world, and the construction techniques for stability, for crossing, wide rivers or deep gorges, the construction techniques often actually quite similar around the world. And so, it's what engineers did everywhere, right? Every culture had their engineers, and building bridges was one of the first things they did. Now let's use the power of the mind to build the bridges between communities in the intellectual sense as well. There is work to be done. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Does that help?
Yes, it is very helpful. Yeah.
And you're still recording, so I will say this in case you need a reference here. But I could have sat and stared at a piece of paper for days and not really crystallized my thinking around what we've just come up with. but thank you, because you know, it brings back very happy memories of designing a course that was actually fairly successful, I think. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Christopher.